Hello, this is Al24 News. I'm Rahim Kashour and starting with our main headlines. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune today, Wednesday, is on a two-day visit in Tunisia in an answer to the invitation of Tunisian President Mr. Kais Saied. More than 102,000 people were rescued from Hong Kong's World Trade Center after dozens of firefighters put out fire that blasted through one of the city's busiest towers, leaving more than a dozen people injured. Plus, crisis in Afghanistan has worsened due to the economic decline, which led most of Iran's population to struggle with food shortage. And finally, the World Health Organization warned the Omicron variant is spreading faster than any previous strain, and it is probably present in most countries of the world. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune is on two-day visit to Tunisia, where he was welcomed upon his arrival in the international airport of Carthage by the President Kais Saied and the senior Tunisian state officials. Zara Ferjani on What Follow will clarify.
President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune arrived Wednesday in Tunis for a two-day state visit at the invitation of his Tunisian counterpart, Kais Saied. A fraternal and official welcome was reserved for the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, upon his arrival at Carthage International Airport by President Kais Saied himself and senior officials of the Tunisian state. This visit is in line with the actions undertaken by both countries to further boost the deep relationship of fraternity between the two countries and expand the areas of cooperation to a quality level that meets the common desires of the leaders. Presidents Abdelmajid Tebboune and Kais Saied listened to the national anthems of the two countries before reviewing a military detachment which paid them the honors, as the 21 cannon salutes rang out in honor of the distinguished guest of Tunisia. This visit is of a paramount importance, as it is part of strengthening the deep bonds of brotherhood uniting the two countries and the broadening of the areas of cooperation to a qualitative level, concretizing the common will of the two leaders and their people. Algerian president seeks to move the political relationship between the two countries to a level of economic cooperation that demonstrates the extent of understanding between the two countries.
And to dig more in this strong relationship, let's follow this special report by Nabil Khazini, who takes us into the Algerian and Tunisian bilateral relations throughout history.
Strong relations have always bound Algeria and Tunisia since the independence of the two countries. Tunisia was the first nation to sign the Treaty of Fraternity and Concord with Algeria in 1983. Algeria, after its independence, was associated with a number of economic partnerships with Tunisia, including the pipeline plans linking Algeria to Italy via Tunisia. $1.25 billion represents the number of trade exchanges between the two countries in 2020, which makes Tunisia one of the most important economic partners to Algeria. Algeria, according to President Tebboune, renewed the commitment of the two sides to continue to combat terrorism by activating all mechanisms on their borders, given that the security and stability of Tunisia is part of Algeria's. President Tebboune has repeatedly said that what affects Tunisia also affects Algeria, and that whoever seeks to harm Tunisia's security will find Algeria on the watch, stressing that Algeria does not accept pressure on Tunisia from the outside. The current Tunisian president, Kais Saied, declared that Tunisia and Algeria share one future, one destiny, and both countries have identical positions, share the same interests, and brotherly relationships will always bind Algeria and Tunisia. In the fight against the coronavirus, Algeria declared it would share its parts of the vaccines with Tunisia. Algeria also offered several oxygen generators when the sanitary crisis was at its peak in the two countries. Today, through the visit of the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune to Tunisia, Algeria and Tunisia aspire to strengthen and diversify their relationships. President Tebboune's visit to Tunisia comes in response to President Kais Saied's visit to Algeria last year, in a first appearance after his election to be a president of the country, a step from the Tunisian president that comes as an expression of the depth of the relations between the two brotherly countries and between the Algerian and the Tunisian people.
The world commemorates the 61st anniversary of the adoption by the UN General Assembly of the Declaration on the granting independence to colonial countries and peoples, when Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa, is still awaiting its self-determination referendum. On his visit to commemorate the 1091 years of the last proclamation of the liberator Simon Bolivar, organized in Algiers by the Venezuelan embassy, Mohamed Omar Talib, ambassador of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in Algeria, affirmed Algeria's unwavering support to Sahrawi cause.
Algeria is everything for the Sahrawi people. Algeria is the one who opened its doors to the Sahrawi people when we were the victims of the genocide caused by the treacherous regime of Morocco. Morocco did not spare any effort in its occupation of our land. Algeria received us. Algeria has given us an unwavering and permanent support. We salute Algeria.
Venezuela commemorated the 191th anniversary of the last proclamation of the hero of American Latin, Libertador Simon Bolivar, which took place in Square Simon Bolivar in the capital Algiers, with the presence of the ambassadors, diplomats, and high-ranked officials. This declaration reflects the deep relations between Algeria and Venezuela.
Algeria celebrates the 191st anniversary of the last proclamation of the hero of America Latina, Simon Bolivar, by building a memorial dedicated to the Venezuelan hero and naming the street after him. In an exclusive statement to Al24, José de Jesus Sojores, ambassador of Venezuela to Algeria, expressed his joy and pride of the strengths of the bilateral relations between the two countries.
Un gran honor.
It's a great honor that our brother Algerians decided to build this special square for Simon Bolivar in this beautiful and symbolic place in the capital Algiers, which unites the spirits of our people. We also have a special square built for El Emir Abdelkader in the capital Caracas, in front of National Pantheon of Venezuela. Every time we pass by it, we feel so happy and proud for having such a monument in our country.
The ambassador highlighted the achievement of Libertador Simon Bolivar, who is considered one of the most powerful figures in the world political history, as he led the independence movement for 6 countries in South America.
Estaba en el Libertador Simón Bolívar.
Libertador Simón Bolívar liberated what we consider now 6 nations, starting from Panama, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, and Bolivia. For us, Libertador Simón Bolívar embodies the spirit and the fight that push for freedom of all people. And not only the people of America Latina and Caribbean, but for the people of the world, the people of Africa. Our liberator has been an example and an inspiration for all the Africans who are defending the right of the people.
The Venezuelan City Council of Mérida granted him the title of Liberator of Venezuela, which Caracas ratified in the same year, becoming an honorary title associated with him for the rest of his life.
To a different matter now, Malian military take control of Timbuktu camp, as French military troops said on Tuesday. The remained 150 French soldiers, commanded by Etienne Duperrot, handed the large key as symbol of giving control to the Malian army to be the last French military troop in the region. Ayadi Osama.
Mali military forces take control of Timbuktu camp after French anti-jihadist military troops ceded the area. The camp was under uninterrupted control of French military for at least 9 years. France's flag was taken down from the camp and replaced by the Malian flag in the presence of a group of Malian soldiers and the remained French troops, in addition to local and UN authorities. 150 French soldiers stayed in Mali, specifically in the Timbuktu camp, since the start of the French withdrawal in April 2013. French General Etienne du Pirou, head of the anti-insurgent Operation Barkhane in Mali, exchanged handshake with the Malian new counterpart and symbolically handed him a large wooden key. Etienne du Pirou said on a statement that France will always be present in Mali, but in a different way, and he explained that this move will allow Mali to take its destiny in its own hands, but always in partnership. However, Mali commander did not make any comments. In a statement, France military announced that Malian military has a strong garrison, which will be accompanied by 2,200 peacekeepers from the UN. Mali has been plunged in a conflict that started as a separatist movement and ended up as a civil war led by different armed groups fighting over taking control of the central and northern region. This move of withdrawing French military troops was preceded by an announcement by the French government, which stated that the latter was preparing to withdraw 2,000 military troops from Sahel region.
Violence in Cameroon raised and left at least 22 people to die. Residents of the far north region in Cameroon continue to flee to Chad, where humanitarian crisis emerged. More to be clarified with Nabil Khazini.
A resurgence of tit-for-tat violence between herders and farmers in Cameroon has killed at least 22 people and injured more than 30 others this week in the country's far north region, urging residents to flee to Chad. Authorities in Cameroon say the situation is calm now and tension has declined.
Dans l'ensemble, la situation
Overall, the situation has become calm again. Shops have been gradually reopening since yesterday, and so far we have not recorded any act of tension. We will continue to receive communities and associations and all those who want to make a contribution to the restoration of peace.
The dispute over water resources in northern Cameroon has caused around 80,000 people to flee into neighboring Chad, where President Mohamed Idris Deby called for an immediate humanitarian assistance. Refugees, mostly women and children, are trying to reach Chad, crossing the rivers Chari and Laguni on rickety boats. Chad is already home to close to 1 million refugees and internally displaced people, and its resources to respond to their needs are critically low. The incident is not the first. Similar violence in August killed dozens of people and forced thousands to flee to Chad.
The Pasteur Institute has announced that the first case of Omicron variant in Algeria was detected in Houari Boumediene International Airport in the capital, Algiers. The infected person was a foreign national who arrived to Algeria on December 10, 2021. Upon arrival, he underwent a genetic test at the level of the airport. In accordance with the procedures and the health protocol established by the Algerian authorities, the result has been positive. The World Health Organization warned the Omicron variant is spreading faster than any previous strain, and it is probably present in the most countries of the world. British MPs have voted for further measures to battle the coronavirus pandemic, despite a sizable rebellion against measures Prime Minister Boris Johnson's own Conservative Party. Zarfurjani clarified.
The World Health Organization has warned that the coronavirus variant Omicron was spreading at a rate not seen with previous strains and was likely present in most countries.
At a rate we have not seen with any previous variant. Surely, we have learned by now that we underestimate this virus at our peril.
British Parliament members have voted for further measures to battle the coronavirus pandemic, despite a sizable rebellion against measures from within Prime Minister Boris Johnson's own Conservative Party. Before the vote in Parliament, it was expected that some 60 and 80 Conservative lawmakers would vote against the government's latest COVID measures. UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid told lawmakers that Omicron is so transmissible that even if it proves to be less severe than other variants, there is still likely to be a surge in hospital admissions if it goes unchecked. His comments came as the government rushed to accelerate the national vaccination program with the goal of offering a booster dose to every adult by the end of December. UK authorities have said the number of Omicron infections is doubling every 2 to 3 days, and the variant is likely to become the dominant form of COVID-19 throughout the country in days.
Adults in England are now obliged to show COVID pass to enter a large event, despite 100 Conservative MPs voting against the government's plans. The rebellion on COVID passes was by far the biggest since Boris Johnson took office. And it is worth mentioning that Boris Johnson is now holding a press conference at Downing Street on the last matter. And to more have updates over the COVID-19 cases all around the world. Let's follow this report.
Australia reopened borders to vaccinated skilled migrants and foreign students after near 2-year ban on their entry. A bid to boost an economy hit by stop-start COVID-19 lockdowns and restart international travel. Prime Minister Scott Morrison stated in a media appearance in radio station 4BC, "We are going to live with this virus and we are not going to let it drag us back to where we have been."
And that's what living the virus is. I mean, the virus is there. Omicron is in Australia, and we're going to live with this virus. We're not going to let us drag us back to where we've been. We've got one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. We're about to tip over 90% double dose vaccinated all around the country. Yesterday, we had another bumper day in terms of our booster program. Almost 100,000 got their boosters yesterday. And we need people to keep going out and getting their boosters.
Germany hasn't ordered enough vaccines, nor stocked enough to keep its vaccination campaign going. Through the first quarter of the year, Health Minister Karl Lauterbach said on Tuesday, amid fears that the country's fourth wave of pandemic might continue to spiral out of the control. Lauterbach said, "I have been working for days to get rid of the vaccine shortage, but indeed we do not have enough vaccines." The operator of Ghana's main international airport will fine airlines $3,500 for every passenger they fly in who is not vaccinated against COVID-19 or who tests positive for the coronavirus upon arrival. The rules comes into effect on Tuesday on Kotoka International Airport in the capital Accra. According to Ghana Airport, it follows a health ministry move last week to require all people entering Ghana to be vaccinated. The Department of Health said the Philippines has detected 2 imported cases of Omicron COVID-19 variant. Its first reported cases, the 2 Omicron variant cases detected from 48 sample sequences on Tuesday, were currently isolated in quarantine facility. The number of coronavirus-related deaths in the United States has surpassed 800,000 according to Johns Hopkins. It's the highest reported national death toll since the beginning of the global COVID-19 pandemic.
More than 1,200 people were rescued from Hong Kong's World Trade Center after dozens of firefighters put out a fire that blasted through one of the city's busiest towers, leaving more than a dozen people injured. At least 13 people were taken to the hospitals, with some suffering from smoke inhalation. Police at the scene, 300 people were trapped on the rooftop of the building, and everyone at the 39-story structure in Causeway Bay had been brought to safety by 5 p.m. At least 60 people have been killed and dozens were injured when a fuel truck blew up Monday night at Somali area near Cape Hayton, the country's second largest city. Over 100 people were reported injured in the explosion, which also burned about 20 homes nearby. The incident occurred as Haiti is struggling with widespread fuel shortage and increased gas prices, caused in part by armed gangs that have set up blockade as fuel terminals in the capital, Port-au-Prince and surrounding areas. As a catastrophic tornado approached the city, employees of the candle factory heard the warning sirens and wanted to leave the buildings. But at least 5 workers said supervisors warned employees that they would be fired if they left the shift early. The workers said that they asked their managers to let them take shelter at their own homes, only to have the request rejected. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip to South Asia is significant as it sends a strong signal, and Washington is keen to strengthen relations with the region at a time of growing tensions with China are on the rise. Islam Sid on what follow.
Considering his first Asian tour, Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, announced that the Biden administration is considering imposing new sanctions on Myanmar's military leaders as an act to restore and redirect the democratic trail, which was interrupted by a February coup. According to Blinken, the mass arrests and violence against protesters due to 10 months military coup had made the situation plunging into a severe crisis. He also stated that the administration is very actively considering tagging the ongoing suppression of Myanmar's Rohingya Muslim population as genocide. He recapped his call for the Myanmar junta to release all those unjustly detained, including democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi.
It's going to be very important in the weeks and months ahead to look at what additional steps and measures we can take individually, collectively, to pressure the regime to put the country back on a democratic trajectory.
His Malaysian counterpart, Foreign Minister Saifuddin Abdullah, said the Association of Southeast Asian Nations must also act about its policy toward Myanmar.
So look at the principle of non-indifference, because what happens in Myanmar is already getting out of Myanmar. It has gone to Bangladesh, and Malaysia is now hosting close to 200,000 refugees from Rohingya.
Amid current tensions with China, Antony Blinken discussed South China Sea, Taiwan Strait and regional alliances during his Indonesia's visit.
It's not about a contest between a U.S.-centric region or a China-centric region. The Indo-Pacific is its own region. Rather, it's about upholding the rights and agreements that are responsible for the most peaceful and prosperous period this region and the world has ever experienced. That's why there's so much concern, from Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia, and from the Mekong River to the Pacific Islands, about Beijing's aggressive actions.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry, on the other hand, says the U.S. stance will only stir up confrontation and pose a threat to Asia's stability.
The U.S. House Representatives voted on Tuesday to hold former White House Chief of Staff from committee investigating the Jan 6 Capitol insurrection.
The release of text on Monday night sent to former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows on January 6 amount to a smoking gun when it comes to whether those in and around the president were aware of the rising insurrection that day and the role of then-President Donald Trump himself needed to play. The sense of panic that enveloped the former president's inner circle during the attack on the U.S. Capitol was revealed on Monday when Congresswoman Liz Cheney, vice chair of a House Select Committee investigating the riot, read aloud text sent to Meadows.
About text messages and other communications that he admits are not privileged. Members of Congress, the press, and others wrote to Mark Meadows as the attack was underway. One text Mr. Meadows received said, quote, "We are under siege here at the Capitol."
Trump, for a number of hours, even as the Capitol was being ransacked, did not think. When he did finally release a video message in response to the riot, it was, something short of forceful. Trump's lack of a quick and convincing response is made all the worse by the clear urgency of the warnings he was getting from the people around him. The Meadows text also provided a bitter rebuke to the attempted rewriting of that day, not just by Trump, but also by his Republican enablers in Congress. The point here is a simple one. Those closest to Donald Trump spent January 6 trying to make clear to him that what was happening at the U.S. Capitol needed to be stopped, and that he was the only person who could make that happen.
His time as a member of the House should make him more aware of the potential consequences of defying a congressional subpoena.
Do we have a legitimate legal question here that we ought to resolve before we proceed with criminal contempt?
He spent hours refusing to do anything, and when he did finally put out a video calling for his supporters to disperse, it was sprinkled with talk of fraudulent elections and a result that was stolen from us.
A day after the visit of the Zionist defense minister to United Arab Emirates, the latter decided to suspend the multi-billion deal of F-35 jets that was signed earlier with the prior U.S. President Donald Trump. This comes as a frustration grows between Abu Dhabi and Washington over the latter's attempt to limit Chinese technology sales in oil-rich Gulf countries. U.S. officials stated that the U.S. is still ready to execute the deal of the F-35 jets, and the country is still best army equipment provider for the UAE. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping held a video conference meeting. The talks are meant to enhance the relations of the two countries and discuss the two countries' hiccup in their relations with the West, especially the United States and NATO. Samayati.
Tension between the East and the West is getting complicated. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping met through video conferencing technique. The summit started as both leaders hailed the relations of the two countries. Russian President considers his Chinese counterpart to be the best regional cooperation partner in the 21st century. Putin emphasized that the two countries formed a new cooperation based on respecting each other's interests and avoiding interference in each other's internal affairs. Vladimir Putin hailed the determination of both countries to transform the shared borders into a belt of eternal peace and good neighborliness. China's Xi stated that his Russian counterpart strongly supports Chinese efforts to preserve its national interests, as he determinedly opposes all attempts of creating a wedge between Russia and China. Earlier on Wednesday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov announced that the main files in the meeting will come in the concern of the two countries' relation with the West and the so-called aggressive rhetoric from the United States and NATO. And he added that the situation in the international affairs, especially in Europe, is very tense and it needs discussion. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin stated that the meeting is expected to further enhance the high-level relations between the two countries. Many in the West perceive this relationship as a potentially growing threat to Western interests. Nevertheless, it might worsen the international diplomacy between the world superpowers and poles.
The head of the European Union's Executive Commission has warned Russia that if Moscow decides to invade neighboring Ukraine, the EU will respond with a slew of new sanctions. More in this report.
On the eve of a new summit on the subject, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated on Wednesday that the EU can take unexpected measures with serious consequences for Russia, in addition to scaling up and expanding existing sanctions. Von der Leyen told the European Parliament that there are already economic sanctions in place for Russia finance, energy and sectors, because of its annexations of Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula in 2014 and actions since that the West sees as increasingly aggressive. Germany's new Chancellor Olaf Scholz reinforced von der Leyen's message Wednesday, telling the lower house of German parliament that any violation of territorial integrity will have its price.
Germany's new government of center-left Social Democrats, Greens and business-oriented Free Democrats has voted to dare to make more progress, but they still face some challenges regarding climate change, welfare benefits, migration, retirement benefits, digitalization, disarmaments, brutality, defense, infrastructure, education, finance and electoral law. Nadia Kasmi.
The new German government under the leadership of Olaf Scholz is actually facing a series of challenges. Climate change is the main focus, and the new government wants all future laws to be double-checked regarding their effect on climate change. Citizenship laws also took set to change. The coalition parties are planning a series of reforms to make getting German citizenship easier. The new coalition wants to bring a citizens' income program into effect. In 2022, it will be raised to €449 a month for a single person, an increase of €3. Germany's population is aging. The Income Coalition has agreed to keep the retirement age at 67. Pensions should not drop beneath 48% of current average income levels. The German armed services will, in future, be able to arm their drones subject to binding and transparent terms and the consideration of ethical and security aspects. The Greens' goal now is to have at least 15 million electric cars on German roads by 2030, with the corresponding expansion of the charging station infrastructure. The three parties aim to support schools in socially disadvantaged areas in particular. The modernization of the school system by means of new digital technology is at the forefront of these ambitions. And finally, the coalition agreement wants young people to get involved in politics by reducing the voting age from 18 to 16. This, however, would require a change in Germany's constitution and would therefore need backing from some of the opposition parties.
Iran nuclear talks have not reached a compromise result yet, as the Iranian government have been accused by the American government of slow-walking the talks. The US is still insisting on Iran that if diplomacy fails, there will be different measures to be taken. US envoy to Vienna stated that Iran nuclear escalation raised concern on intentions, although the US has already announced its readiness of lifting sanctions. Crisis in Afghanistan has worsened due to the economic deterioration, which led most of Afghan's population to struggle with food shortage. On the rate of 7 out of 10 families have been resorting to borrowing food since the Taliban took power of the country in August 2021. Islam Seed clarified.
According to UN's World Food Programme, all Afghans approximately can't afford enough food to eat, and a deteriorating economy could drive Afghanistan's increasingly dire situation under Taliban rule into catastrophe next year. The WFP is boosting humanitarian operations in Afghanistan to assist more than 23 million people facing severe hunger in the country in 2022, as inflation and currency decline make it even more difficult to feed themselves. The program has also assisted 15 million people so far in 2021, with 7 million assisted in November only. All the surveys presented an approximate rate of 98% of Afghans are not eating enough, with 7 out of 10 families resorting to borrowing food, which forces them into poverty. Nadan Nashif, UN Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, said Afghan families face severe poverty and hunger, with many pushed into desperate measures, including child labor and early marriage.
More Afghans struggle to meet their basic needs. People in vulnerable situations, notably women, headed households and children, are being pushed to take desperate measures, including child labor, the marriage of children to ensure their survival.
On the other hand, World Food Programme spokesperson Thompson Ferry also talked about the situation in Afghanistan, in which he urged to cope with the crisis as soon as possible.
The spiraling economic crisis, the conflict and drought has meant the average family can now barely cope. We have a huge amount to do to stop this crisis from becoming a catastrophe. We cannot waste any moment.
Since the Taliban victory in August, foreign aid unexpectedly withdrew from the area. Afghanistan's fragile economy has been left on the edge of breakdown, with prices for food, gas and other daily commodities which have risen beyond Afghans' reach.
Chinese government has been accused in a report on Australian think tank of using foreign influencers to whitewash the Chinese human rights abuses over Uyghurs minorities in the country. The report said China is inviting foreign social media creators to amplify content that support the CCP narrators. For the first time in history, a spacecraft has touched the sun. NASA has now flown through the sun's upper atmosphere. The corona and the sampled practical and magnetic fields that the new milestone marks one major step for Parker Solar Probe and giant leap for solar science. To sport now. So it is less than 2 hours from now, Qatar and Algeria will face each other for the first time in the official game, as all of the 6 previous encounters between them have been international friendlies. Each side has won twice in the fixture, and they have drawn 2 times, the last one ending in 1-0 victory for Algeria in December 2018. But now this is the semi-final of the FIFA Arab Cup. So the question should be raised, who's going to make it through, Algeria the Warriors or Qatar the hosts? Majid Bougoura, the head coach of the Algerian national team, on a press conference confirmed that he had prepared well for this game, saying that the players already forgot the win against Morocco and now they are ready to face the host Qatar. Let's hear it.
Morocco's game is now in the past. We have players who have been to the African Cup of Nations and have great experience in dealing with these situations. Since the beginning of the Arab Cup, we have been preparing for all our matches as a final, whatever the identity of our opponents. We respect all our competitors, and God willing, we will make a big match in front of Qatar. We will face the host country that will play on its own stadium and in front of its public. And of course, this is a kind of pressure. But that's not going to affect us because we always want to evolve, and that's why we put ourselves under pressure every time.
Majid Bougoura stated that the forward line Baghdad, Bounajah and Youssef Blaili, who was really exhausted last game, they are both ready to come back to the field after serious injury for the striker Baghdad, Bounajah against Egypt.
I have been given the go-ahead by the medical staff for the Baghdad Bounajah to participate in the Qatar's game, and all the players are ready, including Youssef Blaili.
As the team just has told me that the Tunisian team is in the final with 1 non-goal against Egypt. Now, to conclude, let's have a reminder for our main stories. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune today, Wednesday, is on a 2-day visit to Tunisia in an answer to an invitation of the Tunisian President, Mr. Kais Saied. More than 1,200 people were rescued from Hong Kong's World Trade Center after dozens of firefighters put out a fire that blasted through one of the city's busiest towers, leaving more than a dozen people injured. Plus, crisis in Afghanistan has wounds due to the economic decline, which led most of the Afghan population to struggle with food shortage. And finally, the World Health Organization warned the Omicron variant is spreading faster than any previous strain and is probably present in most countries of the world. So, Tunisia in the final, maybe Algeria will be there also. We hope so. That's all for now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.